Welcome to another edition of Stacking the Box podcast. I am Sterling Holmes, joined by Mike Luciano. All right, Mike Luciano, Ian McMillan is out. The bet master is out, which sucks for me because I placed some money yesterday and that bet did not hit. I need Ian here, but maybe Mike can give me some good advice. And if you guys want some good advice, go to DraftKings. DraftKings has upgraded their sign-up offer for a limited time. If you're a new user, you can receive $200 in bonus bets by following just 3 steps. Create an account, deposit, and then wager $5+ on any sport. Whether your first wager wins or loses, you will still receive those $200 in bonus bets. All you have to do is use code STB when you sign up. STB not only gets you the bonus, but it supports the podcast. If you're considering signing up for DraftKings, use code STB to maximize your first bets. Offers available for new customers 21 plus and physically present legal gambling states. Please remember to always gamble responsibly. Please use the episode description for the full terms of the offers. Mike, how are you?
It's hard to really feel too bad when Aaron Rodgers is your quarterback and Dalvin Cook is your running back, and especially after watching Zach Wilson, I can't complain too much.
Hey, you're a Jets fan. Come on now. You can always complain.
First time in a long time. Believe me, I've done my fair share of complaining over the years.
We have a lot to get into today. We got our preseason week 2 winners and losers. Jonathon Taylor and the Colts, okay to seek trade. We'll get into our division winners as well. But first, let's start with the winners and losers. Mike.
My big winner immediately was Eric Bieniemy, especially because he shut me up on the last Stacking the Box I was on. I kind of went after Eric Bieniemy because there was that whole report about Ron Rivera saying he's a little bit too aggressive. And I went after him and said, look, like that kind of yelling at everybody, screaming and being angry, maybe it's not the right mindset for this young team. And honestly, I think maybe that might be part of why he hasn't gotten hired. Top of the NFL's a good old boys club. On top of that, I feel like maybe he just didn't have the right leadership persona, and I feel like teams kind of thought that. But, man, he is looking like a real leader out there lately. Helps the Washington Commanders snap the Baltimore Ravens, I believe, 8-year preseason winning streak. That went by the wayside. Sam Howell looked terrific. The offense looked very creative, even without an offensive line that's particularly good. In fact, I think it's one of the worst in the league. The creativity from Kansas City is there. The ability to call plays well and hit big plays when needed from Kansas City is still there. So Eric Bieniemy, I thought, did a fantastic job in what was maybe his big unveiling as a coordinator.
Yeah, I actually want to touch on this a little bit more because when that report came out that he was a little difficult on Washington and some guys weren't responding well, my initial thought was that's a lot of times what winning organizations have. Now, it works when you come from Kansas City. It works here in Kansas City because he's been here long enough. People respect him. You have the Lombardi. You have the rings to back it up. We've seen this a lot from Bill Belichick disciples, right? Joe Judge, what did he do when he got to New York? He tried doing the same thing. The only difference is he's not Bill Belichick. Eric Bieniemy's not Andy Reid, but Bieniemy, it's his persona. He's not trying to be something he's not. And that's why it works, because it's natural. It's natural how Dan Campbell acts in Detroit. That's who he is. Sometimes I think these coaches see what it worked for their maybe their predecessors. They see what those guys did and they try to emulate that. But it's not who they are. Bieniemy being this hard-nosed guy is who he is, so it works because it's honest. So I like that. I love the fact that a lot of the Chiefs players backed him up. You heard Patrick Mahomes saying, hey, man, it helps us. That intensity helps. And I think you're starting to see it with Washington. It's making that Washington team look like a completely different team.
I mean, I was really skeptical of the whole Bieniemy experience, for lack of a better word, because, I mean, there's always that debate when you go to a coach that's an offensive coach like an Andy Reid, and then there was that debate, well, how much of it's Patrick Mahomes, how much of it's Eric Bieniemy, how much of it is Andy Reid. And again, I think the Matt Nagy kind of really burning brightly and then fading away in Chicago, I think kind of added to that about, all right, like how much of these coordinators really do. And I think he had a pretty good showing. I mean, obviously preseason versus regular season, huge difference, but you know what? He gets the Cardinals week 1. That's a good chance for him to really kind of have some fun. So what's your big winner, Sterling?
Really quickly, I want to point out Matt Nagy did win Coach of the Year. I will die on the hill, and I thought he was unfairly treated in Chicago. Okay.
I mean, he did have. I think Trubisky was 24-12 or something like that.
Yeah, that's my whole point. They went to the playoffs with Trubisky. He didn't draft Trubisky. He was already there. He did as good as he could with the hand he was dealt. And then Doug Peterson won a Super Bowl. Not too bad for the latest two Andy Reid disciples. That's not bad. And I feel like a homer here. I'm really not trying to be, but the Kansas City Chiefs. I get it. It was Arizona. Arizona's a very bad team, probably the worst team in the NFL. I understand this. The Chiefs had 4 quarterbacks with a QBR, with a passer rating of 109 or higher. Mahomes was the lowest at 109. Shane Buechele, 10 of 10. Blaine Gabbert, 7 of 8, 2 touchdowns. I mean, wherever you looked, a star was shining on the field for Kansas City. There's been this talk of 2 years ago, Tyreek Hill's gone. Last year, Juju Smith-Schuster's here. Now he's gone. Well, the Chiefs have no wide receivers. Okay, Rashee Rice, 8 of 9, 96 yards. He dropped his first ball. He bounced back. I mean, you look around this team, and all they do is find guys that produce. The Buccaneers basically said, Donovan Smith, our offensive line is horrendous, and you still can't come back. So what's he do? Signs a team-friendly deal with Kansas City, and how's he look so far? Like the Donovan Smith of 2021. I've been very impressed with the way Kansas City's culture, the way they're able to identify talent, identify players that might not fit elsewhere. They found Richie James up in New York at a very nice end of the year, but even the Giants said, what are we going to do with Richie James? The Chiefs said, all right, we'll take a flyer on him. Now he's the punt returner. The Chiefs have done a great job bargain shopping, and so far it's paying off massive dividends.
I think at this point, too, you got to wonder, is Shane Buechele finally going to take the title of best pro athlete in the family? Because his father, Steve Buechele, played in the major leagues for 12 years, good power hitting third baseman, I think with the Rangers, played most of his career. And the Chiefs are one of those teams, every year New England had a guy like that where you're like, how did the league let New England get that? Like, how did the league let Rashee Rice go to the Chiefs? How did they let Shane Buechele go undrafted and then the Chiefs sign him up? Like, I know Buechele was kind of iffy at Texas, but he was worth a draft pick. And I think Kansas City, for as much as I think I honestly criticized them, because I just thought Chad Henne, I know Chad Henne proved me wrong, but during that era, I'm like, all right, you got to get somebody with a little more gumption than Chad Henne to be your backup quarterback if Patrick Mahomes can't play. And for all of Blaine Gabbert's faults, I mean, he's kept bouncing around the league. He's kept working at it, and he's become a serviceable backup. And I think Buechele's really got some talent. So I think, obviously they're not going to win a Super Bowl with Shane Buechele's a starting quarterback, but it wouldn't be a tire fire. It wouldn't be like when Peyton Manning got hurt and then Curtis Painter played for the Colts.
Yeah.
That's not happening.
I do love, you're right. How did they get that guy? 2 more. Justin Ross, undrafted, another spinal injury and the foot injury, but you're seeing the early returns already. The Chiefs were able to wait, and he looks like he's going to be a impact player this year. Then Trey Smith in the 6th round from Tennessee, the guard. I mean, sometimes you look around and teams are trying to outsmart you, saying, hey, there's injury concerns here. Well, why not take a shot in the 5th, 6th, 7th round? Chiefs did, and it's working out very well for them. All right, Mike, loser of the week. Who do you have?
Loser of the week, and it is through no fault of his own. It is just bad luck. It is DeMarvion Overshown, a rookie linebacker from Texas that I thought legitimately was going to make an impact on this Cowboys defense. I thought he had really good range. I think he played some defensive back in college, so he's got tremendous athletic ability. Then he bulked up to become a linebacker full-time. It was just announced Overshown has an ACL injury, and that is probably the end of his rookie year with the Dallas Cowboys before it even really began. And I'm heartbroken for the guy because I thought that he was another late round steal. I thought he was much better than where he got picked late in the 3rd round. A Texas guy playing for the Cowboys from UT. You couldn't write the script any better. And then now we got this, and it's another one of those Cowboys banged up linebackers. It's Jalen Smith, it's Jabril Cox, it's Damone Clark. Just throw another one onto the pile. And I hope Overshown ends up better than most of those guys, but I mean, not the best way to start your career.
Biggest loser this week is me. Biggest loser this week is me because I didn't bet on the Commanders to beat the Ravens to snap that streak after I told Ian I was going to do it. Last week on the show, he said he's putting money on the Ravens, and I said, you know what? I'm going against the trend. The Ravens are due to lose. The Ravens are due. I said it was time. I'm putting money on it. And what did I do? Forgot to put money on the game.
You just forgot.
You know what I did instead? I put it on Bobby Witt Jr. to get 2 hits. You know what he did instead? One hit and a home run. And I'm just sitting here going, I can't bet. I'm an idiot. I'm a buffoon. And I needed Ian here to make sure that he will remind me to place money on the Ravens. So the biggest loser is me for not going with what I said I was going to do.
And Bobby Witt for not coming through, too, in what has been a nauseous Royal season. So, on top of that, so it's a double whammy of losers.
I want to stick with the Ravens finally falling. That streak was phenomenal. It was 24 straight wins for the Baltimore Ravens in the preseason. Washington was able to get it done. We mentioned the job that we think Eric Bieniemy is doing, just the addition he has brought to that Commanders team. But when it comes to the Ravens and that streak, what do you take away from that continued success that they have had in the preseason? Is that a case of they try harder to win games in the preseason? Is it a case of this is sheer luck? Is it a case of they have so much depth consistently year after year that it shines through late in games? What did you take away from the consistent nature of the Ravens' wins in the preseason?
That John Harbaugh still might be the most underrated coach of the last 20 years. Because every year I feel like I hear John Harbaugh firing rumors, then you look up and he wins 11 games and gets in the playoffs. I think part of what makes him so good in this area is I think people forget Harbaugh was a special teams coach with Andy Reid and the Eagles before he came to the Ravens. And no one goes into football with the intention of being a gunner on a punt team or playing on kick coverage. So you have to deal with 4- and 5-star wide receivers playing these sort of roles. You got to get them to buy in. You got to get them to play hard. And I think that kind of percolates over to this because he's playing with a lot of guys who, even though they were dominant in high school and dominant in college, they're coming in and they're backups and they got to play limited roles and they're just playing their hearts out to make a roster. That's the guys that John Harbaugh made his bones with when he was with the Eagles as a special teams guy. And then now that he comes to Baltimore, I think he's instilled that culture very well. Now, part of it is he had Ozzie Newsome as his GM early on, and that obviously helped with the depth. And Eric DeCosta, I thought's done a fine job in most areas. He doesn't know wide receivers to save his life, but in most areas, I think he's done a pretty good job of getting depth and knowing where the holes are. So, bit of a combination of both, but I just think John Harbaugh really knows what he's doing. I think he's just a really good leader, and I think history is going to look at Harbaugh more favorably than maybe some guys do now.
I want to get into the big story in the NFL today, and that is All-Pro running back Jonathan Taylor has now been granted permission by the Colts to seek a trade. A league source tells ESPN's Adam Schefter yesterday on Monday. The Colts want trade compensation in the realm of a first-round draft pick or a collection of picks that equates to one, the sources said. No offer has materialized as of Monday evening. I'm very intrigued to see how this plays out. My initial thought process is, are the Colts basically saying, you know what? We are going to show you what your trade value is. We are going to show you what other teams think you're worth. It's not just us. I know you think we're a bunch of bleep holes. I know you think that we're a bunch of bad guys who are trying to bring your value down. You are a running back coming off of a major injury. Your value is not very high. Teams aren't going to trade for you and then in return make you the highest paid running back in football. Good luck with that. I wonder how much of that is going on in regard to the Colts finally saying, you know what? Yeah, go try and find a trade partner. What are your thoughts here?
Well, he's also a running back that's averaged 5.1 yards per carry for his career and was second offensive player of the year voting in 2021. What drives me crazy as such a pro running back guy is I just think the whole running back debate is the clearest example that I can find in sports right now of real labor suppression. Because all these metrics and stuff that show like, oh, don't pay a running back, like owners aren't going like, oh, wow, what a smart PFF formula right there that really opened my eyes. They're going, oh, great, we can pay guys less. That's where the debate is coming from. And I think there's almost some sort of, it reminds me of 1980s baseball where owners would just say, hey, don't offer any of our free agents money. That way they have to all come back to us. They actually got sued for that. I feel like that's what a lot of teams are doing where they're saying, all right, we're not going to offer you any of your running backs big money. We saw it with Saquon. We saw it with Josh Jacobs. And they'll have to come crawling back to you because they want to play football because they're football players and want to make money. And they saw what happened with Le'Veon Bell, and they don't want that to be them. and they're just driving the salaries down because
but wouldn't Le'Veon Bell be a perfect example of why owners aren't going to do this? Why Todd Gurley is an example of why owners aren't going to do this?
Well,
Why
there's
you
also
look
like Marshawn Lynch and other guys like that where if you pay him and then it ends up working out fantastically. It just depends on the player. And a lot of that too is guys just get hurt and you can't predict injuries. Like I know running backs get hurt a lot, but Frank Gore played till he was 37 and he never really got hurt.
yeah,
Like,
but don't use the outliers. You see, you don't want to use the outliers. Use the base case. Okay. Throw out the highs, and you can throw out the lows if you want to. Then if that makes it better, if you want to throw out the Todd Gurleys and the Le'Veon Bells, then that's fine too. But what you're left with is a position where there's so much talent in there. How much does a difference? Let's just say a difference between, let's say, Alvin Kamara and Aaron Jones. What's the difference in the player there? Because quite frankly, you can make the case that right now Aaron Jones has been better than Alvin Kamara, and that's been on quite frankly, a cheaper deal. And then you go down. How much better is Aaron Jones than, let's just say, easy enough, let's say Isaiah Pacheco. Well, that's a 7th round rookie running back. I mean, the list goes on and on. You can find these rookie running backs late on in the draft, and you'll find value. You go to the Super Bowl winning teams. Which one of them have a offense that's predicated around a superstar running back? You don't see that anymore. So teams are saying, hey, I know these are great players, but is it worth sinking this much money in to a position that does not move the needle that much?
Well, 2 reasons why I think the Colts are out of their minds for doing this. Number one is running back production, I think, can be replaceable in that, like, if you want to find a guy who can just plot his way to 1,000 yards, like, I think there's a ton of really good running backs out there. Was it all guy or Algier for the Falcons? Another 5th round guy who had 1,000 yards. Like at a base level of production, if you have a good offensive line, like if you want to call that replaceable, sure. Healthy Jonathon Taylor ran for 1,800 yards with Carson Wentz as his quarterback. Like you can't just find that. You can't no running back the Colts are going to add this year, if they get rid of Jonathon Taylor, is going to be anywhere close to Jonathon Taylor. Sure. And then of course, if they want to draft a replacement, it's, well, don't pick a running back high. So like there's a bunch of good running backs out there. There's no Jonathon Taylors. There's very few Saquon Barkleys or Josh Jacobs. They're not out there. And number 2 is Jonathon Taylor right now is on a team with a rookie coach, Shane Steichen, who also runs the ball a hell of a lot because he was the Eagles guy with Jalen Hurts, and he's been a pretty good developer of running backs, and a rookie quarterback in Anthony Richardson. Like, if the thing is always, we want to build a really good team around our quarterback on a rookie deal and then pay him when he deserves it, like, these are the guys you pay on a rookie deal. You don't get rid of him now. They're doing it backwards.
This is about the one team you look at and say they probably should be the team to pay for Jonathon Taylor.
Exactly.
Again, I'm not saying if I'm building the team, running back is about the last spot I'm taking a look at. Okay. That's just how I'm building the team. But when you have, let's just again say you're doing a draft, you have your rookie quarterback, well, you're going to want to get a running back. You're going to want to pay the high-end running backs and try and keep them there because you can afford that right now. You have multi-years left of Anthony Richardson on a rookie contract, right? You have that 5th-year option, which is a first-round pick. You have a long time to decide. You're not giving Jonathon Taylor a 5-year contract anyways. You're probably getting 3, 4, probably 4 the most. So that contract's going to be off the books by the time you have to pay Anthony Richardson anyways. If there is a team that it makes sense to pay a running back, you're right. It actually might be the Indianapolis Colts.
Yeah, and the other thing, too, is when I'm looking at the trade market, I mean, like, there really aren't not that teams don't want Jonathon Taylor, because I think teams would if they don't want to obviously pay him the money is the big thing. I think teams acknowledge Jonathon Taylor's a pretty good player. Like, I'm looking around the league. I can't find a ton. Really, the only 2 spots that I looked at and I thought that I think they could definitely make a move for him. Number 1 would be Minnesota, because even though they got rid of Dalvin Cook, I mean, I think that even Dalvin Cook right now would tell you Jonathon Taylor's an upgrade. And I think he's a guy worth paying for in a Sean McVay disciple offense that's going to run the ball a lot. Alexander Mattison, probably a very nice guy. I don't know. I've never met him. He seems like a nice guy, but he's nowhere near close to either of those 2 guys as a starting talent. And then the Eagles. Because the Eagles, I think, they've drafted insanely well. in the last few years. They have DeAndre Swift there, and I think that DeAndre Swift's probably going to be in for a pretty big year as the kind of the top dog there. But I don't think Howie Roseman's going to look at a guy like Taylor available, see the idea to run Jalen Hurts and Jonathan Taylor all the time in the same game and think, we don't need that. It just seems very obvious to me.
What I find interesting is the Colts are saying, hey, we don't think this guy's that valuable, but based on what they are saying, their words, Jim Irsay, all of this stuff. And then you hear reports for a first-round draft pick. And I get it. What are the Colts going to say? Yeah, we want a fourth. I understand that aspect of it. They're not going to say, yeah, we want a third, we want a fourth. They're going to obviously ask high and then potentially come down. But there is that little oxymoron, if you will, of this guy's not valuable. Now give us the most valuable pick you have. I just find
multiple valuable picks.
All right, when it's all said and done, does Jonathan Taylor play this year? And if so, for who?
I think he just ends up coming back to the Colts. I think right now this seems just very bitter feuding couples who eventually are probably going to get a divorce, but they just are going to at least try couples therapy and see if it works right now. I think they're in that sort of stage right now where there's going to be a huge pissing match between both of them. And I think eventually they're going to be like, all right, let's just play this year. Let's just cool things off and then revisit it later. Almost what the Jets did with Elijah Moore when the Jets were 5-2 and Elijah Moore's like, I don't get the ball enough. They're like, all right, you can complain all you want. Just play this season, shut up, and then we'll probably trade you later. Just not in the season, just be quiet. I think that's probably what's going to end up happening.
I think it's a very apt description right there. Very apt. All right, let's get into Trey Lance. Finally starting to look a little better. I've always been a pretty big Trey Lance supporter. I think what he has the potential to do is open up the 49ers offense unlike any quarterback they've had in a long, long time. He is clearly a very raw quarterback. I thought I saw a stat where Geno Smith last year had more pass attempts than Trey Lance has had in any of his college or professional career. That was in one season for Geno Smith.
Tom Brady had more last year than high school, college, and pros combined for Trey Lance.
And that's just, again, what goes into Trey Lance. You see the high-end talent, you see the potential, but when you don't have the opportunity, especially in a game setting, it's very difficult to get better. He threw an interception early on a screen pass, first possession of the game, but then threw up a 22-yard touchdown pass and then two huge passes to set up a game-winning kick. Trey Lance is starting to show some signs of improvement. I think it's probably too late this year for him. I think Brock Purdy, by all accounts, will be the starter. But I'm starting to get more enthused that Trey Lance can still revitalize his career, if not in San Fran, at least somewhere else.
I liked Trey Lance as a prospect, but when he even got picked number 3 overall, it still confused me. Because I know he's got the rocket arm and he's fast. I think the 40 times are a little misleading. And for Trey Lance, it's probably a little slower than the 40 times would tell you. But if you just said, we're going to take a guy who's an FCS guy, North Dakota State, who runs the ball 70% of the time. They are a punch you in the mouth, I formation, run the ball team. They're not like this big futuristic offense where he's learning all these complicated concepts. And then you're going to go, and after he didn't play that one, you remember COVID, he only played that one little showcase game. And then the Niners take him. And then he said, you got to learn a Kyle Shanahan offense, which is basically like a theoretical physics doctorate in terms of how complicated it is for an NFL quarterback. I mean, God, you ever heard a play call from one of those offenses? I mean, there's 12 terms you got to memorize. The other thing, too, that frustrates me about Lance is it's not like the picks or anything like that, or even the inaccuracy. It's, if you watch him, there's a lot of times where guys are just wide open. He's looking at him and then patting the ball, doesn't let it go. Brock Purdy is a very limited quarterback. Jimmy Garoppolo is a very limited quarterback. Guys open, they throw it to him. And that's why Kyle Shanahan liked him and went to bat for him so many times. Is Kyle Shanahan set up this system. I feel like he almost wants to be the quarterback, Kyle Shanahan. He's living vicariously, and he's like, I can see that guy's open. I would throw it to him. Jimmy Garoppolo makes that throw. Brock Purdy makes that throw. Sometimes Trey Lance doesn't. And I think he's talented, and I think some team will definitely give him a second chance. I just feel like he's kind of run out of road. And John Lynch better, whatever he prays to religious-wise, he better say a prayer or do a rosary or whatever, that he still had. The fact that he's drafted so well outside of that, like that trade is the kind of mega bomb that ends careers where you don't even get like an assistant scouting job after that. If you move heaven and earth and those picks to go and get a guy, he starts 4 games, and in year 3, like he's not even a thought of beating out the 262nd overall pick. And it's not even being entertained. He might even be the 3rd quarterback behind Sam Darnold. Like, he's been a pretty good GM, but that is a titanic unforced error by the 49ers.
Heading to Tampa Bay, they have now named Baker Mayfield the starting quarterback. Kyle Trask was starting to look better. He had a brutal preseason game 1. Looked a lot better preseason game 2, but they're going to go with Baker Mayfield. This is the first time they've had a legitimate open tryout for the starting quarterback because they wanted Kyle Trask to have a opportunity after sitting behind Brady and then obviously Blaine Gabbert. But they went with Baker. They went with the veteran. This to me is a little bit of a head-scratching move. The Bucs aren't good, okay? Make no mistake. The Bucs aren't good. Why not go with Kyle Trask? If you have any inkling that he can be your future starting quarterback, you have to give him the chance. And you have to have that happen in game, real action. Not in the preseason, in the regular season. Baker Mayfield isn't doing you anything. Like, I'm happy for Baker. I'm happy he gets another opportunity. I get all that. The Bucs aren't good. They're not a good team.
Well, I guess maybe the thought process is no one else in the NFC South is any good. So they're like, hey, if Baker, because remember in Cleveland, he would just go on these 5-6 game hot stretches where he just couldn't throw a pick at all. They're like, you know what, maybe if he just gets hot and we go like 4-2 at one point in a tough part of the schedule, like, I don't know, maybe that'll be enough to kind of stumble into the playoffs with 9 wins. I guess that's the thought. I don't know how
9 wins is winning that division. 9 wins is cruising through that division. My point here is, even with Baker, even with a hot streak, they ain't getting to 9 wins. Now, I'm sure this is going to be clipped and put on the whole hot takes or cold takes exposed. I get that. But my point here is, with Kyle Trask, if you have an inkling, make him the starter to see if he grows, or if he crumbles, you know what happens? Congratulations, you just got Caleb Williams. This is what I would do. And again, I'm not saying it's a tank job. I'm not trying to tank if I'm the Buccaneers, but you know what you have in Baker. And unless you think he's about to put on a Geno Smith in Seattle Seahawks type performance, I just don't get this.
I could be wrong, but I believe this is Baker Mayfield's 8th offensive coordinator in 6 NFL seasons. Oh. So you want to talk about a guy not having consistency. And first off, he had Hugh Jackson, he had Freddie Kitchens, he had Kevin Stefanski. Then he goes to Matt Rule, Sean McVay, now Todd Bowles. So 6 coaches, 8 offensive coordinators in 6 seasons. I mean, I don't care how good you are. Frankly, it's impossible to win when you got to just, all right, remember everything you learned last year? Throw it out. New stuff. It's difficult. And I think just on a base level, like, I think Baker Mayfield is kind of a fringe starter in this league. Like, I mean, no one doubts he's got arm talent. No one doubts he can make plays. Like if you put him in an offense that's still got Evans and Godwin, I think the offensive line is not amazing, but I still think it's pretty above average for the rest of the league. Like, Tampa's not going to be great. I don't think they're going to be like Caleb Williams, Drake May level. And I think maybe this is an indictment of Trask, because I think maybe if in their minds, if they're putting Trask out there, they're like, all right, we're just punting on the season, which is not good for someone you picked in the second round 2 years ago or 3 years ago. But I mean, a lot of guys, I got to give credit to the NFL film guys on Twitter and the draft guys on Twitter. They were out on Trask before everybody else, because they saw a guy who was not mobile, a guy who really only had 1 year of great production. And for a guy who's big, I mean, 6'5", 240, like, he really doesn't have like a rocket arm, kind of like a check down guy. So I think they just thought, you know what, if we can't in good conscience say we're going to try and make an effort this year and start Kyle Trask, like, for better or worse, Baker Mayfield will get hot a couple times and win you a couple games. And I guess that's better than just completely punting on everything before the season even starts.
I think teams might see what happened in Seattle and say, hey, that could be us. No one thinks we're going to win. Like, I don't think the Buccaneers are a good team, but I didn't think Seattle was a good team last year. I was a fan of saying, hey, maybe let Drew Lock start for the exact same reason. Maybe you find out if you have the quarterback of your future or you have a high draft pick. Well, they proved me wrong. It worked with Geno
The
Smith.
difference with
I just
Geno
don't see
Smith,
that
though, is
happening in
Geno
back-to-back
Smith was
years.
in that Seattle team for years, was in the same offense. The Shane Waldron, he had that a couple years ago. Like, he kind of knew what was going on. He knew all the players. He had chemistry. He'd been there a long time. Like, that's, I think, a little different than Baker Mayfield, who's just almost at this point like a mercenary and a wandering Ronin, just signing one-year deals with teams that aren't supposed to be any good. So I don't think he's going to be Geno Smith level good this year. I think he'll be fine because, I mean, that's kind of what he was for most of his career, was fine. But, you know, I don't think fine will win you that division. I don't think fine will get you the number one pick either.
I will also want to point out Baker Mayfield is only 3 years older than Kyle Trask.
What?
Baker Mayfield, just looked it up, is 28.
Isn't Stetson Bennett and isn't Lamar Jackson younger than Stetson Bennett?
That might be the case. But Baker Mayfield being 28, and it's not Sterling, his birthday's in a week. His birthday's in April. I mean, he's 28 years old.
And he has a weather-beaten face for an NFL quarterback, man. I mean, he's been through a lot.
So if you want to think of it this way, Baker Mayfield still could be the quarterback of the future, very unlikely as it may be. Being 28 years old and you're seeing the age that quarterbacks progress, he should be entering his NFL prime. They always say about 28, it's a little different than a lot of other sports or a lot of other positions. You're running back, you're about done by 28. If you're a quarterback, you're entering about your prime. So if you want to take it that way, if you're the Buccaneers saying, hey, we may have found something here. It's not just a one-year deal with Baker. We think he could be the guy for 5 years. Well, then maybe it makes a little bit of sense. I will always point out, I hate the way Baker Mayfield was treated by Cleveland, because if that was the case, if he knew what was going on there, I don't think he played through that shoulder injury. I personally don't think he's ever been the same since that injury. I distinctly remember him playing through that injury, and instead of going out of bounds, he took on a guy, and he hit the exact same shoulder. And I'm sitting here going, that's not good. Very next, was a few more games, and he's done. They ship him out. They bring in Deshaun Watson. And I don't think he plays through that injury. And I definitely don't think he initiates contact on that same shoulder if he knows the way it's going to go down, because he was not taken care of, and he has not been the same since. I will always point that out. I root for Baker Mayfield because of that. I think he's a
Okay, it appears that
hard-nosed play. I hear connection.
I believe that was you for a couple seconds. So, oh boy. So it appears that we have some technical difficulties here on Stacking the Box. Let's just give everything a minute to kind of regroup. See if we still got Sterling. Yep.
All right.
I think the internet said that's too much Baker Mayfield talk. Okay.
My back, because on my end it's you that's buffering. So I don't know what's happening.
It's you that's
either
buffering.
me or you. So I'm the ass.
Okay. All right. It looks like, even though there's a slight delay, that picture-wise everything's back.
Do we get into divisional rankings now? Do we get into our divisional standings?
I would say that's a pretty good idea.
All right. Divisional standings. Let's get into it. Let's start in the AFC, going west to east. AFC West. Who do you have, Mike?
I mean, I feel like this one's pretty obvious. It's the Kansas City Chiefs, is it not? Now, I really feel bad for the Chargers, like genuinely, because you go from Drew Brees to Phillip Rivers to Justin Herbert, and after all those years of elite quarterback play, you're like, finally, this is going to be our division to run, and nope, Patrick Mahomes for 10 years or 15 years or longer, however. So the Chargers, I think, are still going to be a good team. I think they actually may have the best record of any wild card team in the AFC. So I think they're going to be fine. The Chargers are going to be an okay team, but It's Kansas City's division. It's Kansas City's conference until proven otherwise. Knock them off. Maybe they have an 11-6 year or 10-7 year. Like, give me some reason to doubt them, because I've doubted them in the past and they've shut me up emphatically, especially that defense. Mostly it was the defense. I mean, Patrick Mahomes, what are you going to say about Patrick Mahomes at this point? So they'll be there. I think Denver, I think, will be slightly improved, even though I think Sean Payton is kind of a PR merchant who's one of the most overrated coaches in some time. Because, well, I mean, all right, look.
No, I'm with you, man. Hey, he's got as many rings as Mike McCarthy.
That was the exact point. And he had Drew Brees all the time. He only got to one. Like, I remember every year it would be 13-3, 13-3, 13-3, losing the NFC Championship game. I mean, one year it was the Rams with that pass interference penalty that was totally not his fault. So I'll absolve him for that. But I think Denver will be better. The Raiders, I honestly think, could be in like the Caleb Williams, Drake May race, which is sad for Devontae Adams, a guy who's really good and works really hard and wants to win. And he's like, all right, I'm going to go play with my buddy Derek Carr on a team that I grew up rooting for, the Raiders. And then Josh McDaniels has a pissing match with Derek Carr. And then what do you know? Derek Carr's out of here. And Devontae Adams is left going, well, what am I doing here? So poor guy. I think there's some good players on the Raiders, but I think it might just be better to be like, you know what? Let's run Jimmy Garoppolo and his broken foot that we still don't even know if it's any good or not. And then maybe we'll get Caleb Williams or Drake May, because there's no way you can go toe-to-toe with Justin Herbert and Patrick Mahomes this year and really compete with them.
And I love Max Crosby. I love the competitor that is Max Crosby. I know it's probably hard to say as a Chiefs fan, but I think he brings so much to the table, and I appreciate that passion he exudes each and every snap. But the Raiders are not good. The Broncos, I don't think, are good. The Broncos' defense is really good, but I truthfully believe that Russell Wilson is cooked. Like, I'm not trying to be a hot take artist. I just don't think Russell Wilson's good. Like, I think he is done. And Sean Payton's going to have egg on his face, because after he called out the previous regime saying, no way Russell Wilson has fell off a cliff like that. Hey, Sean, he fell off a cliff like that. Good luck with it now.
Peyton Manning fell off a cliff like that. It happens.
It just does. And so have fun. I don't think the Broncos are very good. I think they missed the playoffs. I think the AFC is too deep. They might win 8 games, 9 tops. That defense, I think, is actually legitimately good. Okay. Like, I'm a huge fan of that defense. I think the offense, though, stays pretty similar. It will be an improvement. He is a better head coach than Nathaniel Hackett. Don't get it twisted. I still think he's in the ilk of the Andy Reids, the Bill Belichick's, the Denver fans and New Orleans fans want to make you believe he is. The Chargers are an interesting concept. You almost have to take into account injury. Like, I hate doing that, but they are perpetually injured. It's what they do. They collapse in big moments. They collapse in big games. They have been picked year after year to knock off the Kansas City Chiefs. They just don't do it. Until they do, why pick them? I have the Chiefs as the 1, Chargers 2, Broncos 3, Raiders 4.
So we're aligned on that. And also Brandon Staley, I just don't think is a mental giant who's a great coach. I think he's just a dude. So a total NPC coach who won't make a difference, which you need a difference maker coach.
Let's get into the AFC South. What do you have for the AFC South?
I am going to go with Jacksonville winning the division, because the prince who was promised, Trevor Lawrence, looked like who we thought Trevor Lawrence would be. I don't think they're a Super Bowl contender yet. I think they're like a year away. I think Calvin Ridley is going to be huge for them. I think they need like 1 or 2 more years of adding guys, but I really think Trevor Lawrence kind of showed what he could be. I think Doug Peterson was a great hire in terms of making an environment where he could be successful. I like the pieces that they got around him. I thought, even though it's Trent Baalke, I thought some of the guys they drafted were pretty good. I think Trayvon Walker is finally going to have the breakout year. Like, he's there's no way you could be that athletic and get 3 sacks every year, where you're 270 and you run a 4.51, and then you're just like a rotational lineman. I refuse to believe that is Trayvon Walker's future. And now, after that, it's a weird miasma of what's going on. I still think the Titans are going to be second, and actually, I think the Titans might compete for a wild card spot, which sounds kind of ridiculous, but Ryan Tannehill, with all those awful receivers, he was throwing at guys who were like working at UPS right now, I think, last year. I mean, he was like 7-4, 7-5 when he started. And then Malik Willis and Josh Dobbs, I think they were winless or maybe won 1 game out of 6 when they started. So when Tannehill's healthy, for all their faults, they keep winning games. I just think Vrabel is probably a top 5, I think it's fair to say now, coach in the league. Like, I know there's guys like Belichick where they're just like best emeritus until he retires, but like in terms of the last couple years of what he's got, I thought Mike Vrabel was phenomenal. And I think he'll do another good job this year. In terms of Houston and Indy fighting for the bottom spot, I think Houston, this is maybe a hot take, I think they'll get the 3rd spot over the Colts, who are going to be in last. It's the same sort of situation, new coach, rookie quarterback, defense is kind of a mess right now, but I just really am all in on DeMeco Ryans. I think he's a terrific coach and leader. I think he's a good defensive mind, and obviously bringing some of the San Francisco guys with him to Houston as is par for the course whenever they hire a Shanahan guy. I think that's good infrastructure. And I think C.J. Stroud's just a better quarterback than Anthony Richardson. Even though I like Anthony Richardson, I'm all in on Stroud. So I'm going to go give him the number 3 spot here.
You and I are in massive agreement. I was shocked that we are in this much of agreement, but I am. Jags are winning this division. But I do think the Titans are going to make it a little interesting. Mike Vrabel is such a damn good head coach. I get it. There's not a lot of talent on that team, but it hasn't been the most talented team in the past, and they still find ways to win. Got to give him a ton of credit.
People forget, too, in 2 straight years, their first-round picks were Isaiah Wilson, who, I mean, he played, 4 snaps, and then he tried to be a rapper and got arrested, and they cut him 6 weeks in. That was a first-round pick. And then Caleb Farley, who I think has brittle bone disease. They just didn't draft very well, and he still kept winning.
I like Houston. I'm with you. C.J. Stroud was my favorite quarterback coming out of that draft, which is weird to pick an Ohio State guy, but that's the way I saw it. I think C.J. Stroud is a difference maker at quarterback, and I love Will Anderson, man. Had a chance to interview Will Anderson, and you can see why they would trade up to get Will Anderson. That is a building block. That is a piece. That is a dude. That is a dude. And you saw him in the preseason. I get it. It's the preseason. That was a Jadeveon Clowney at South Carolina type of play he made. Watch out for Will Anderson. I'm not saying the Texans are good, but I'm saying they're going to surprise some people by maybe winning 6 games, and they're going to be in a lot of games.
Do you know what Will Anderson's stats were his sophomore year at Alabama as a defensive end? 101 tackles and 17.5 sacks. That is insane. And then obviously he was getting doubled every play last year, so he had a pathetic 10 sacks. But I mean, this dude is. I don't think people realize he's all-time good. I think as a defensive end, just a prospect. I think he's in that Myles Garrett, Clowney tier.
I'm with you, man. 100% with you. Let's get into the AFC North. AFC North, what do you have?
I got actually. Maybe this is controversial. I got Baltimore taking on the AFC North title. Very, very narrowly over Cincinnati. Whoever loses that's going to be one of the wild card teams, I think is fair to say. I just think that Lamar Jackson, I think Eric DeCosta is a good GM. I think he's good at finding depth pieces. My one fault with him and with John Harbaugh is they just didn't understand how dire things were offensively. They kept dumb Greg Roman around, who was running 300-pound fullback Pat Ricard split out at wideout and had him running routes, and had the most basic, boring, vanilla passing scheme for their MVP quarterback. Now they got Todd Monken, who is 11 personnel. We're chucking bombs. That's going to be a huge improvement. Cincinnati, really good 1-53. Burrow's great. Chase is great. That gives you just a high enough floor. Cleveland third, I think, because Deshaun Watson was, I think, just really rusty last year for not having played for all the obvious nefarious reasons that have been very well documented why Deshaun Watson didn't play. Deshaun Watson, regrettably, is a good quarterback, and I think he'll play better this year. And I think Cleveland's roster with guys like Nick Chubb is just talented enough where they're going to win probably 9 games, I think. And then Pittsburgh, Mike Tomlin's great. TJ Watt's great. Kenny Pickett is playing well in the preseason, but let me see it in the regular season first before I really go all in on Kenny Pickett.
I have the Bengals winning this division. I thought about the Ravens. I'm not going to lie. I thought it was interesting because Lamar Jackson, when healthy, that's what they've been. They've been the 1 seed with a healthy Lamar Jackson. But at some point, I have to sit here and say, is Lamar Jackson going to play the entire season? Is he going to be healthy? Maybe with the new
Pro Bowl
offensive
quarterback
system.
Tyler Huntley.
No, he's
as the backup.
I will say with the new system, maybe that does help Lamar Jackson stay a little healthier. If they're focusing more on him as a passer instead of a runner, maybe that actually helps him stay healthier. We will see. I think they just miss out. I think the Bengals get that 1 seed in this division. And then I think the Ravens come home with 2. I think they do make the playoffs. They're a wild card team. I actually have the Steelers at 3. I'm higher on Kenny Pickett. Now, he needs to stop, and I was sick of last year. They kept saying, well, that was a maybe non-interceptable ball that just got intercepted. I'm like, no, that was a bad throw that was picked off. He just threw that thing up there. That needs to come down. But what you can't teach sometimes to these guys is being aggressive at quarterback. You see so many times quarterbacks who have arm talent just check down. You see it with Justin Herbert too much, and it makes me angry. I'm like, Herbert, you're too good.
Well, that was Joe Lombardi being a mess.
We'll see.
By the way, Joe Lombardi's Russell Wilson's coordinator now too. So
that's brutal.
Working with Sean Payton. So,
but to me, I think Kenny Pickett has a little bit of that. You know what? I'm going to try and make a play, and he's got some receivers who can make some plays. So I actually have the Steelers probably at 9-8, and they're my 3. And I think the Browns are at 8-9. They're my 4.
I think that's pretty fair. I don't like Deshaun Watson, but I mean, guy's good. I just can't. He's not going to be 7 touchdowns, 5 picks again.
Yeah. AFC East, what do you have?
AFC East, I may lose my Jets card. I still got Buffalo. Still got Buffalo as the top dog. Again, narrowly. Like maybe if Buffalo wins 12 games, Jets win 11. I think that's kind of where they're at. The Jets have some big holes. I think the offensive line is still not very good at all. They're moving pieces around to a frightening degree. Like Mekhi Becton might start at right tackle, despite the fact he's played like 30 snaps there in the preseason, which is kind of alarming for a guy who also gets hurt all the time. And the secondary, like the corners are great. The safeties are still a big question mark. But when you have Aaron Rodgers and you have Dalvin Cook and you have Garrett Wilson, that just gives you so much firepower. I think they'll be right behind Buffalo and Josh Allen, who's going to be great again. Miami's in 3rd. Tua is better than all the internet says he is. And I think when you have Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, it's so easy for a guy like Mike McDaniel to just draw up all these crazy fun plays. They'll be hard to stop, even though their defense is not very good and Jalen Ramsey's out. New England last, which is tough to say about Bill Belichick. And I think they'll be better than last year offensively because I think Bill O'Brien's in. For all his faults, the dude's a real coach and a real offensive coordinator who can operate a scheme. For all of his faults, it's not Matt Patricia. I think Joe Judge was also kind of the offensive coordinator, but he didn't call him that. And every time he got called on, he's like, "What do you care?" It's like, well, it's a pretty simple question here, Bill. It's better than that. But again, after Mac Jones regressed hard last year, he's got to prove it to me all over again.
I hate that I agree with you again. I want to have some arguments with you. I want to fight. I want to throw some hands. But man, I am with
Cincinnati.
You.
That was it.
That was the only one really that's been a huge game changer. But yeah, I think the Bills win the AFC East. I think the Jets come in second. I'm a huge Jets guy right now. I think what they're doing is fun, man. They're going all in for Aaron Rodgers. We didn't see this in Green Bay, but we're seeing it now with the Jets. And he rewarded them. He took that huge pay cut. He's like, I'll save some money for your guys. I was shocked that even happened. But the one question mark I have is that offensive line. It's great when you have all this talent, but if you don't have time, it ain't gonna work. So we have to see what the Jets do on the offensive line. We won't get a great feel until the regular season's underway. It might take 4 or 5 games before we really have a great understanding. But that defense also is electric. For the same thing I said about Denver, you know how great that defense is? I had the same thoughts about the Jets. It's electric. They're extremely, extremely talented. So the Jets second, Miami third. I think Miami is pushing for a wild card spot. I do have a lot of questions health-wise with Tua, obviously. I think it's a very fair question to have. But their team has gotten better. That defense was atrocious last year. It's going to be pretty good this year, potentially, for Miami. Adding Jalen Ramsey, I know he's injured, he's going to miss some time, but I'm also a huge fan of Jalen Phillips, the defensive end. I think he is a game changer. Watch out for him on Miami. And then fourth is clearly the Patriots talent-wise. You just never know with Bill.
With that one comment you said, though, when you were like, I hope the Jets doesn't take 4 or 5 weeks to figure it out. Have you seen the Jets schedule early on? They go Buffalo, Dallas, New England, Philly right off the bat. That is, if your offensive line's not figured out, That's going to be a problem. They
Oh,
might start Billy
you forgot
Turner
the Chiefs
against Micah
too.
Parsons. What?
Chiefs are in there too.
Oh yeah,
Chiefs
and the
are in
Chiefs
there
after that.
too.
I think they play the Giants and then they play the Chargers after that. Like, really, all like the games they're supposed to win easy. It's like, Atlanta, Washington, Houston. That's like all December.
Yeah.
But like early on, it is a gauntlet.
I like this from John. The AFC just keeps getting better and better. Very true. And Jets stacking the deck, not stacking the box, stacking the deck. With you there, John. They have a loaded team. Let's head to the NFC. NFC. Let's start with the NFC West. It's the Niners. Come on.
It's the Niners.
Yeah.
It's the Niners and then the Seahawks. This is probably the easiest division, I think, to figure out, where it's Niners 1, Seattle 2, Rams 3, Cardinals 4. Cardinals not only might they get the number 1 pick, but if Houston stinks, they might get the top 2 picks because the Will Anderson trade. I think they're almost banking on that. Where they're like, look, let's be awful. We'll find a way to offload Kyler. We'll get Caleb Williams, and then new era with Jonathon Gannon.
What I find interesting with the Rams is some people are really high on them and some people are really low on them. I'm pretty low on them. I know they still have Aaron Donald and Matt Stafford's back and Cooper Kupp. They still can't run the football. The offensive line is not fixed. They've lost a lot of big pieces on defense. You see Aaron Donald, Cooper Kupp, and Matt Stafford and say, how bad could they be? And I'm sitting here going, I think they're bad. Like, I think that's a bad team. And maybe I'm wrong, and maybe they come out and they win 9 games. But I know the NFC is bad in general, so maybe that happens. But I would be shocked. I just don't think the Rams are a good team.
Do you know who is starting at linebacker right now for the Rams? Their starting linebackers are Michael Hoke, Christian Roseboom, and Ernest Jones. I do not believe Christian Roseboom is a real player. I think that's a fake person. Sorry, Christian, if you're listening.
Ernest has been there a while, so I'll give him that. Ernest Jones is legit. But that was a pretty easy division to go through. NFC South. Now, this might be the most convoluted one where you could probably pick any of the 4 teams. If you give me a good reason why, I might entertain it. What do you have in the NFC South?
I got Saints 1. I'm a big Derek Carr guy. Like, even before, when it didn't look like Aaron Rodgers was a possibility for the Jets, I was all in on Derek Carr as the guy you got to get for your quarterback. I thought he got a raw deal in Vegas. I thought that he was not supported properly. I think he'll do pretty well with the Saints, who, again, have a pretty good baseline to work with, even with Alvin Kamara suspended. I like their offense. I like some of the guys they got in the front 7. Atlanta, 2. Because people made it seem like Atlanta was just this unwatchable dreck last year. I mean, they won 7 games and barely lost a couple of other ones. Like, Arthur Smith's a good coach. He's got these guys in it. I'm a big Desmond Ridder fan. I thought he was QB1 in 2022. I thought that he should have been a first-round pick. I thought he was more deserving of being a first-round pick than Kenny Pickett based on his film. So I'm big on Ridder. I think that they also have Bijan Robinson, too, for a coach who likes to run the ball and help Derrick Henry get 2,000 yards. That's going to be a huge addition for them. So Atlanta 2. I'm going to probably say Tampa 3, Carolina 4. I wasn't as high on Bryce Young as everybody else was. I think they traded a lot to get him. DJ Moore, who would have been his best receiver, and then all those picks. And again, this isn't really Frank Reich's fault because I like Reich. I just think that Matt Rule left them in such disarray. It's going to take a pretty long time to kind of dig out from under that. It's almost like watching the end of the Urban Meyer Jaguars. Like, that's what I kind of feel like we're kind of starting with here. I think next year they'll definitely be a lot better. But for right now, I don't know if I'm too high on them.
I got Saints 1. I like Derek Carr. I'm with you. They have some really good wide receivers with Chris Olave. Michael Thomas looks pretty good so far, at least early on. Their defense is always extremely, extremely solid. Still a lot of talent there. And their offensive line is a good offensive line. I know it's preseason. I understand all this stuff, but they diced up the Chiefs. Their first team diced up the Chiefs' first team. Again, no Chris Jones. I get all that. But the Saints look good, okay? There's something to prove. And I think they're going to be a pretty good team. Second, actually, of Carolina. I'm higher on Carolina than most. I think they have no DJ Moore. They supplemented a lot of players on that defense and offense. I'm pretty convinced this Carolina team is not good, but if they won 9 games, I would not be shocked. Again, they're not winning 9 in the AFC. it's, again, the caveat, they're playing in the lesser division, and not just a lesser division, they're playing in the NFC South. Okay, that helps them. So I have Carolina.
The mystique of Bryce Young got ruined for me because I was watching just some pictures going around when he was playing the Jets, and he was standing in the pocket and he was standing on his tippy toes, looking like scanning the field. I'm like, okay, I don't know if a quarterback can stand on his tippy toes, and I don't know if that's gonna work.
Dog, Kyler's tiny too. It doesn't matter how you get it done as long as you get it done. We'll see. But I got Carolina 2. I have Atlanta 3. And then I have Tampa 4. Heading to the NFC North. What do you have in the NFC North?
I'm going to go Vikings 1, Lions 2. I know the Lions are kind of the flavor of the month kind of team. I mean, they're in the kickoff game. They're projected to win the division. I think they'll be a wild card team. I really like Ben Johnson as an offensive coordinator. I think Jared Goff is like Derek Carr, where he got kind of an unfair deal from the rest of the league. I think he's a very good quarterback. I like some of the pieces they got, but the defense is a lot better. Let me get that. The defense is a lot better. They got year 2 of Aiden Hutchinson. They got some new faces in there on the coaching staff, but the Vikings won 13 games last year, and I think they were the first team ever to win 13 games with a defense that was ranked like 30th or below. I think that was the first one. And Kirk Cousins is still there. I know Madison stinks as a running back, but I feel like he'll get close to 1,000 yards. I think just because of how they run the ball. I think how the offensive line kind of has improved lately. And again, Justin Jefferson, front runner for offensive player of the year again. I mean, if it comes down to like some Vikings-Lions games twice a year, I mean, how the hell are they going to stop Justin Jefferson? I think that's a big weapon that you need to account for. And then I got Chicago 3, Green Bay 4. Not even necessarily because I think Jordan Love will be bad, because I don't. I think he'll be fine. Although you are basically going off, 2018 Utah State film to justify it, because he was bad the last year and then he hadn't played for 3 years. So you're going off 2018 Utah State film. I think mostly just because Justin Fields will take a huge step forward. I think he's got actual receivers around him now. I think Luke Getsy was a little overmatched as an OC year 1. He'll be better year 2. And then you got a defense that has Tremaine Edmonds and a bunch of other guys that are brought in by a defensive coach, Matt Eberflus. So through no fault of Jordan Love, I think the Bears will just be a lot better this year.
Yeah, I think the NFC North is the most consistently solid division in the NFC. Like the NFC East, as we'll get to, obviously, is the Eagles and Cowboys. But the NFC North, it has 4 teams who I think are pretty darn good, at least solid. When I say good, that might not be the right word. I think they're really solid. I have the Lions winning. Okay, the Lions, they were top 5 last year in so many offensive categories. DVOA, yards per game, points per game. That continues. The Vikings coming in second, a close second. I like Kirk Cousins a lot. But I don't think they're as complete based on that defense. I think the Lions defense is going to take a massive step forward. That's where I'm finding the differentiator right there is between the defenses, and that's where the Lions get the edge. Coming in third, I have Green Bay. I think Green Bay is not going to be as bad as people think they are. Like, I know a lot of people have Green Bay finishing 4th and being bad, and Jordan Love. That's a decent team. And I think the stink of Aaron Rodgers is now gone. Like, he did not want to be there. They were tired of his stuff. They've moved on. It's a new era. They got something to prove. Green Bay 3, and I think the Bears are 4. I don't get where everyone's coming up with the Bears. All of a sudden, they're going to win like 8 more games than they won last year. Like,
I don't know about 8. I mean, maybe they end up with maybe 8 and 9. I think that'd be fine for them. Year 3.
But everyone's crowning Justin Fields as a top MVP candidate, and I'm like, yeah, he's good in fantasy because he runs. Like, what have you seen from Justin Fields throwing the rock he's not Lamar Jackson. Like, what have we seen that everyone's so like, I don't get it.
The arm talent is there. When I've watched Justin Fields, like the All-22 this year, I think he's just he's very hesitant. It's Trey Lance stuff where he's very hesitant.
Point. Like, I love Trey Lance.
But Fields is just a little bit, I think, just better as a thrower than Trey Lance, so he can kind of make up for it where Lance can't.
I hope I'm proven wrong. I just don't see it with Justin Fields. I just don't. Like, it's time. He's got wide receivers now. He's got a better offensive line. I love the draft pick of Darnell Wright in their left tackle last year, who was kind of an unproven young guy, was pretty solid. I'll give him credit. That offensive line's better. But you got to do it now. You got to prove it. There's no more potential talk. It's time to do it. All right. Finally, the NFC East. I'm going Eagles 1. Eagles the best team in the NFC totality for me. I think the Eagles are really, really good. I think Cowboys 2. 3 Giants for Washington, but I think Washington is more improved. And I think the Giants, they take advantage of a weaker NFC.
Yeah, I don't think the Giants are going to be. I just don't know if I trust Daniel Jones still that much. I mean, people thought Daniel Jones was almost going to be like beat out by Tyrod Taylor early last year. I remember seeing tweets earlier in the year, put Tyrod in, I've had enough of this. Like, he had a fantastic 8 or 9 game run. And he's back with Mike Kafka and Brian Dable, and he has Darren Waller this year and Saquon. So, like, I think he'll be serviceable. I just don't know collectively. I think they kind of caught guys off guard last year. Like, whoa, the Giants kind of, surprised us. I don't know if they get that same luxury this year. Washington 4, I liked what Bieniemy did earlier, but I mean, that team could win 9 games. That team could win 1 game. That team is extremely volatile. All depends on Sam Howell. Cowboys 2, I mean, it's Cowboys, the same old Cowboys. They're going to win 10 games. Dak's going to be like the 11th best quarterback in the league, which is like perfect debate argument fuel over how good he is. They're going to like be the number 5 seed, and they're going to beat probably the Saints, who get the 4 seed in a playoff game, and then go play the Eagles and get smacked. Like it's going to be the, same old song and dance. Through no fault of their own, they have a good team. I like their players, but it just feel like every year it's 10 wins, 11 wins, 10 wins, and then, is Dak really a franchise quarterback? Like, I'm so sick of that. It's the same thing every year. It's going to be that again for the Cowboys, because I like the Chiefs a lot, but in terms of just 1 to 53, how low the roster is, it's the Eagles, and then there's everybody else. I mean, find me a weak spot. Where are they not good? Where are the Eagles deficient? Anywhere? I can't find long snapper. Maybe I can't find it. They're loaded everywhere. And Jalen Hurts is an MVP candidate. I mean, that was kind of the linchpin of the whole thing.
Yeah. I wish we would have disagreed more, but this was fun. Mike Luciano, make sure you follow him on Twitter at BY Mike Luciano. This was Stacking the Box. Make sure you throw us a like. Make sure you give us a review. We'd really, really appreciate it. Back next week with Ian McMillan. I might be here. I might not be, okay? We're going to figure it out. We're kind of just rotating in and out before the regular season starts. Kind of nice. Maybe give you a little college football update. But this was Stacking the Box. Until next week, we are out.